That feeling of irrelevance, I think, was about feeling powerless, actually. I've always thought or told myself or believed that, the harder you work, the better you are, the stronger your performance, the more rungs you climb up the ladder, your amount of power grows and grows and grows. And then it's my responsibility to yield that power in a responsible and equitable way. And I looked at that as, how do I learn systems, help dismantle them, and develop new systems that provide access to more people. And I had to come to kind of the realization and the acceptance that I wasn't as powerful as I thought I was, and that these corporate systems and structures aren't designed to do what I want to do. And that's okay. I could either spend the rest of my career fighting against them, or I could build them myself and yield power in the ways that I really, really wanted to. I could feel the powerlessness kind of draining, from me every day. And I was like, oh no, I don't think I want to do that again.
Welcome to Leadership on New Terms, a show with the leaders renegotiating the terms of work as AI rewrites the work itself. I'm Caroline Fairchild, and I'm so thrilled to be joined here today by Channing Martin. She's a senior business leader, a coach, and a consultant who most recently was Chief Diversity and Social Impact Officer at IPG. Channing, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Caroline. I'm so happy to be here.
Since we were first connected and we had our pre-call, I've been looking forward to this conversation. And for those of you who are joining us, it's going to be a treat. We have many interesting things to discuss. Let's go back to the tough times, though. You were Global Chief Diversity and Social Impact Officer at IPG. On December 1, when the acquisition was finalized, you were laid off like a lot of people, and then you had to lay off your entire team except for one person. Unfortunately, this is something that so many people are going through right now. Walk me through that day.
Yeah, well, it was a really challenging day. We started to feel that things were shifting, right? The acquisition closed the day before Thanksgiving, so we knew something was going to be happening, but just really not sure what. And, you kind of get that text from your boss in the morning, and you're like, mm. Start to hear rumblings of other teams being laid off. And so I knew that something was happening. And yeah, I got the call to let me know that, I was, done, and this would be happening all over the organization, and that the team would also be exited except for one person. So I think in these situations, like, you don't get a lot of explanation of why or how or what or who. You just kind of have to move forward. And I think my mindset went to, how do I make sure I get, I'm connected with everyone on my team before they find out about it in a mass email or a town hall. That was really, really important. But it was really challenging. I had never been through a layoff before, on the receiving end. And so it was a real shock to the system. And I know in this industry in particular, marketing and advertising, it's quite common, but it was not common for me, even as you try to prepare for it to happen. And that whole day was really about trying to get information, trying to provide information to the team, meeting with them one-on-one, meeting with them together after, the bigger, larger department meeting, one-on-one again. Lots of questions, not a lot of answers. So it was a long day, and it was a pretty emotionally charged day as well.
Well, focusing on your team and making sure that they find out through you as opposed to some mass email, that's what makes you a good leader to begin with. But what was going on internally? You're someone who has reached the top of their field, and now that job is no longer there. What was that like to think about?
Sometimes I think in my mind, there was this level of irrelevance that I was experiencing, which feels so strange, especially because during my time, there are times in my career where I was so relevant, especially in crisis mode when the organization really needs you. And oftentimes being an inclusion and equity leader, that's often in times of turmoil and intense change. But to feel, irrelevant, and again, oftentimes your emotions and your thoughts don't align. So most of that day they didn't. But I think that was a part of it, but also feeling so responsible for the people on my team. So there was a bit of this kind of gut punch to the system, but also a responsibility and kind of the need to keep moving forward and continue leading through it. not just up until the first, but through it always. And you're a leader no matter whether you have people reporting to you or not. And so there's a sense of responsibility, but also a little bit of like the leash was dropped. You know, when you're walking a dog and you drop the leash and they just run free, a little bit was like that. But they're like looking back at you. They're running away from you, but they're looking back at the same time. And that's a little bit of what I felt was I kind of have this runway now. But there's also a bit of guilt and shame that I was experiencing that comes along with that.
I'm sure that that roller coaster of emotions is something that so many people who are in career transition right now can relate to. Tell me a little bit about what you're actually building. And what are the pieces? And how are you kind of moving through this career transition?
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited about this. And my mind has been really expansive once I came out of a fog at the end of January. But really, four things that I'm excited about. The first thing would be is building an advisory practice. And I'm really focusing in two areas: this love for a future of work and what that means for the workforce and talent and culture, and advising brands on purpose, really supporting their social impact and purpose initiatives. The second is coaching early career, which I think is a thread with the future of work. You can't really think about the future of work without thinking about the future and the future workforce. I've been really invigorated by early career folks and young people. And instead of being afraid of them, I think we can learn a lot from them. And we should be designing futures for them to thrive. The third has really been a new one for me and exciting is this idea of entrepreneurship through acquisition and really kind of jumping on the wave of this silver tsunami. The idea that I could be a business owner and an entrepreneur without building a product was really exciting to me. My brain just doesn't work that way. I don't want to build a product that I have to scale and sell, but I want to be an employer. I want to watch my employees send their kids to college. I want to build an organization that treats people well. And I want to transform communities through small and medium-sized businesses. So I'm really excited about that. That's the one that scares me the most. And then the fourth, which is the one that's totally out there that I woke up the next day thinking about, was buying a farm and building this community that is focused on wellness and safety and really true living, a space for other farmers to farm, wellness space, community school, building and developing homes that are affordable for first-time home buyers and folks who are trying to retire, but it's too expensive. And I'm really excited about the future of that and what it means as a landowner, but also just a totally different pace and way of life and living.
It's a lot of stuff, and I want to unpack each of those lanes. But
Yeah.
first, I want to go back to something that you said in that answer where you said, I have no desire to go back to the corporate world. Would Channing 10 years ago believe that you would be in a position where you would say that today?
No, I don't think so.
What shifted? What changed? Why is that something that you no longer think you want to do?
I started really thinking about power. And the first question you asked me, that feeling of irrelevance, I think was about feeling powerless, actually. I've always thought or told myself or believed that, the harder you work, the better you are, the stronger your performance, the more rungs you climb up the ladder, your amount of power grows and grows and grows. And then it's my responsibility to yield that power in a responsible and equitable way. And I looked at that as, how do I learn systems, help dismantle them, and develop new systems that provide access to more people. And I had to come to kind of the realization and the acceptance that I wasn't as powerful as I thought I was, and that these corporate systems and structures aren't designed to do what I want to do. And that's okay. I could either spend the rest of my career fighting against them and not building wealth for others, or I could build them myself and yield power in the ways that I really, really wanted to. And something about the experience of going through this acquisition from the day it was leaked in the Wall Street Journal a year before, I could feel the powerlessness kind of draining, from me every day. And I was like, oh no, I don't think I want to do that again. I don't want to experience that.
Right. And you mentioned building wealth. Can we talk
Hmm
a little bit about the financial reality of leaving a C-suite role and starting from zero? We talked a little bit about this when we first connected. So there's the 401k match, the healthcare, the things that the company used to do, but now you're kind of looking around the room and it's all on you. How is that?
It sucks. I mean, like, that's like not a great, vocabulary word, but that's the only word I could use. Today it sucks. Tomorrow, you might catch me on a different day, but you're navigating a totally new system if you've never been through it before, whether it's Cobra and your old HR team and the realities of the cost of healthcare outside of a system. And for all of maybe the things in the system that you may not like, it's still a system, which means there are support structures in there for a reason. And you're out there on your own. I describe this as like sitting in the first row, of the economy section in the plane, and your legs are just dangling. You're just in no man's land. And that's what it feels like for me quite often, in this solo capacity, is that I'm just kind of in no man's land, just dangling. And that has really forced me to think about what is building new structures for myself, what is building community in this phase of my life and career look like, which is really exciting, but also it can be daunting. And you kind of think, you're like, dang, for the last 15, 20 years, I've built a support system and I've networked and I've done that and I built relationships. And like, you just keep doing it. It keeps going and it keeps evolving. But it is every day. It's kind of scary.
Two things can be true at the same time.
That's right. Absolutely.
You mentioned community. So almost every Black woman who held a senior global DEI role at a
Mm-hmm.
major public company has been laid off or
Yeah.
restructured over the last 18 months. The numbers speak for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
What are the women you came up with actually doing right now? And do you have touch points from that community?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's so interesting because I think there are a couple generations of women in particular in this work, in this field. And I often recognize that I was very young to ascend to this level of senior leadership. So I was often kind of connected to women who were older than me that were kind of the trailblazers in this work before they were called chief diversity officers. And I think thankfully for some of those women, they are at a point in their careers now where they had retired out or left the corporate world on their own terms and have started their own advisories or board service or et cetera, and mentorship, and getting mentored by those women is a lifesaver. I think there's also kind of a Gen X generation of women that are really navigating their next steps. And I think that's been really challenging. What I have seen is that there's kind of a percentage of organizations that have stayed committed to the work, whether they've kept their same roles or the role has been redefined or renamed or moved. There is that percentage of organizations that does still exist, and we aren't talking about that as much. There's also this percentage of organizations and women, as you mentioned, that have been exited from their roles, and they are doing the work to find those organizations that are staying the course, and the roles just look really different. But it has been a really challenging time to navigate because you're constantly fighting against something, and I think that can become quite exhausting for folks. And then also the idea that the organization was never really committed to it in the first place, I think can also evoke this sense of irrelevance. But I kind of track this, even though I'm not actively looking for these roles, but can the chief diversity officer or a similar role is popping up. I see on Indeed and LinkedIn all the time. Now, I think the reality of that is often I'm seeing comp is suppressed. I'm seeing lower comp across many different roles, and they may also look like different companies. And so I'm seeing folks in this space navigate this, I think, in a really smart way, while also trying to protect their own piece. When what you do for a living and what you believe in and love is constantly being attacked and then not supported by your organization, it is really difficult to exist in that state for a long period of time. Our bodies weren't designed to do that. So I'm hoping that a lot of folks are reinventing what they're doing and how they're doing it while still staying true to themselves.
So you're seeing some women trying to navigate this moment, hopefully inside companies that are still doing the work,
Mm-hmm.
but probably under a different name. And then, like yourself, a lot of women going out and doing work on their own terms.
Yeah, I'm seeing that quite a bit. A lot of coaching, a lot of consulting. There are a lot of organizations. Once you let go your DEI team, there's so many things the organization that no longer knows how to do. And the people that were doing all of these things aren't doing them anymore. And so I think there's a huge opportunity for folks with this skill set to really support and advise communities or organizations where they have more choice in who they work with and how they work, because the need is still there. You still have people. We still have to run these organizations on the most important asset that we have, which is people.
Absolutely. And across everything that you're building, part of your argument is that, women have to invest in each other. It could be capital, it could be time, it could be buying a business that's owned by a woman. What are you actually finding in terms of the infrastructure that's in place right now for women to invest in women? What are you still hoping to build that isn't out there right now?
I thought there would be much more support. I mean, I know the numbers because I track it, I know the metrics, but it is kind of astounding to me. Not only a lack of like financial investment, but the work that women are doing to kind of put these communities together, and really also, and sometimes trying to convince other women, like, no, like, you don't have to go to the boys. Like, we can do this ourselves. We've done it. We've been in those rooms, in those spaces. We can build this the way we want, that serves us and aligns with our values and our needs and desires. And I think oftentimes we often distrust what's new or what's different. We are going with the days of old or what we have seen that has traditionally worked. And I really don't want to do that. I think the communities do exist, or a person exists. And then if you want to start something on your own, you kind of go for it. I've been kind of not paralyzed in the thinking, but kind of like, oh my gosh, like, this is like M&A activity. This is a deal. I need to really surround myself with people in finance who understand like creative financing, what options are available. You don't know what you don't know. But I think for any person who's aware that they don't know what they don't know, that's a great place to be, because that just means you really have to seek out that support and that help. And I'm excited to kind of create a new kind of ecosystem of women in a world of the things that I don't know. Really to support me and to support so many other people who are looking for this sort of help.
So, as you build out this portfolio career, part of you finds yourself in rooms and circles of really powerful women where you're trying to navigate what it would mean to buy a business or a farm, as a dream that you've had since the day after you were laid off. And then on the complete other side of the spectrum with your early career coaching, I'm sure you're seeing a lot of women who are navigating this from the bottom up.
Right.
What are you telling them about the system that they're walking into based on your experiences?
It's such a timely question. There's so much discourse, whether it's around like Emma Greed's book or it's lean out versus lean in. So I think this is such a relevant question, and it really depends on the person. I think something that I had to realize is you do have your set of philosophies and theories and things that are important, right? And I think one of those things for me is to do the work to identify, and I call this kind of reinvention work, and really focus on what is your purpose in this season? Like, what are you aiming for? What is it that you really want? And what are the things you're really afraid of that are blocking that? But I think, I would never just tell every person I'm coaching or that I'm talking to, leave the job and go forge something on your own. I think, what I'm finding is that there are some commonalities around fear, uncertainty, a lack of transparency. There is a discomfort and a lack of confidence in a lot of folks in early career roles right now, for many of the same reasons that you can't just blame AI for. There's a lack of really strong leadership that's existing. There's a lot of change and rapid transformation. And so what I'm often focusing on is really moving with intention and staying true to who you are, right? And that's really about being human and moving at the same time. And for some folks that I'm talking to, that looks like shadowing or trying a new project or working on something laterally in a different department or with another person on another team in their organization. And for some, it looks like starting to consult outside on their own while keeping their full-time role. And I think that's a little bit about the beauty of the times that we're in, and the idea of this portfolio career is to really teach people that they have choices. And I think that's where real power lies, is in the choice. I'm more so concerned that folks are unable to navigate this time of rapid transformation and stay human while doing it. And they're not experiencing the humanity of others all at the same time. I think that's a really dangerous place to be. It amazes me that we worked alongside people in a time through a pandemic, through the public murder of George Floyd, through anti-Asian hate, through, terrorism, that we can see in real time, and we can navigate those changes. Sometimes those days were almost unbearable, and there are really, really critical moments where most of us experienced our organization take leaps or stances or investments or changes that we never thought that they would do. Whether the conscience of the organization was pure or not, we were able to witness rapid transformation during a time that was really, really challenging. And so I'm wondering why now the idea or threat of AI has almost paralyzed so many people in being able to navigate change, when we have navigated the creation of the internet, of social media, a global pandemic where many organizations were more profitable and more productive than they were prior to. And so I think we really have to figure out how to move with, and clarity often comes in the movement, not after. And so that's really what I've been talking to a lot of early career folks about.
You mentioned so many tough moments that corporate America has had to navigate from all across the spectrum, but AI is the one that's on the table now.
Mm-hmm.
What is your hypothesis about why this is throwing not only early career professionals, but everyone?
A few things. I think the pace is one. I saw kind of a statistic recently, and it was really looking at the timeline and the pace of change with the creation of the internet and how long that took with AI. And just, we're doing so much more faster today. And I think that organizations already don't do a great job of keeping with pace. They do better than usually public institutions or the government does, but still not great. And I think that feels threatening. And when people feel threatened, whether it's their job, their skill set, their company, there's so many other impacts to that in your human life that's outside of the job, that the warning sign goes off, whether you're going to lose your job or you're going to become irrelevant. Can you get another job? What does this mean? I think the other dynamic we have about it is just like our media landscape. There's so much information that's really not high quality about AI. And so on any given day, you could be a person who wakes up thinking that you're the only one in your entire town or city who doesn't know what AI is and ChatGPT, but everybody else does. That's not true. The rate of adoption in corporate America is very low, and actually lower than the rate of adoption in folks' personal lives. There's so much misinformation and a lack of information because most of people don't know. And I think we're doing a disservice to the workforce not taking that approach. It's like taking a second to take a step back to really upskill the workforce, to really redesign the roles, the jobs, the skills that are aligned with those jobs, what roles you want to keep, what roles you don't want to keep, and redesigning what that means for the people that you already do have, while also being transparent and open about that process. And already we don't do workforce transformation or any transformation super well, and we're connected to these jobs. I'm looking at so much student loan debt and time and investment in building skill sets and experiencing microaggressions and prejudice in the workplace for years and years and years. You're developing, people are putting themselves through the ringer, going back to work after having babies in 4 to 6 weeks. You name it. And so you've committed to this thing, like you signed up for this social contract, this social marriage with work, I think in particular in America. And there was no prenup because apparently the terms have changed, and I'm not seeing half on the other side. Okay. I'm not keeping the house. I don't have a vacation home in the Hamptons. I didn't get any of that stuff that you had before. And I think that is really scary for people. So there's this is being met with a lot of fear and resistance.
Right. Yeah. It's misinformation, rapid pace of change, and a system that was not set up to support these people to begin with. I actually can't
Absolutely.
think of a worse equation when it comes to how workers are thinking about AI right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was at a makers event with a small group of women. And one of the women, she was a founder, I believe, and she said something like, Could you imagine, like, if women were creating all of the AI tools, how much, like, that would support, society at large and productivity, like what we do in a day? The majority of women who are running their households to starting businesses to being the workhorses on a team at work, the tools, like how we could really navigate what a future looks like in the world if we were building these tools ourselves. I mean, I was like, wow, I thought about that. I'm like, yeah, my life would be totally different if all the AI tools I use were created and built by women.
Absolutely. It's why we need more women to adopt AI, even though it's a scary, scary thing right now.
I agree.
Channing, one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation with you now is that you're about 5 months out from this layoff.
Hmm.
So you're still in it. But at the same
Yeah.
time, you do have a little bit of hindsight and perspective.
Hmm.
There are so many people being laid off right now, speaking of the headlines in the news.
Yeah.
What's your advice for those who may wake up tomorrow to the layoff announcement that you received, 6 or 5 months ago?
Ooh, what a great question. And you're right. The 5 months has been helpful to answer that because you catch me on the wrong day and I might say something different. But today, what I would say is allow yourself to feel all the feels. And that could be anything from empowerment to betrayal to they can kick rocks with open toed shoes and everything in between. And you're allowed to do that and you should. The second thing I would say is not to think about this as an ending, but really a new beginning, and you get to choose what that beginning looks like. And I don't take that lightly. Like most days, I'm trying to remember that, and it's like, okay, great, like woohoo, a new beginning, but like that's still it's fun, but sometimes not fun. But that is just the reality. And if you mourn too long the past, you'll really get stuck in that. And I was there for a little bit. I love my team. I built my team. I liked my organization. I love the leadership team. I love the work that I was doing. I really had this attachment to the thing. And I really had to let that go because I may never rebuild that in the same way, but I could rebuild something else that's even more impactful and more relevant to the new space that I'm going to be in. So I would really, really urge you to mourn, but not too long. And then the third thing is like do something that you've either been really afraid to do or something you've always wanted to do. Take the time to do it. I don't no matter how big or how small, whatever it is, do it. I wanted to go back into learning French. I minored in French. I spoke French years ago, had not done that in a really long time. I enrolled in a French class, okay? Like, I really wanted to do that. And so it's something I didn't have time for before. So do something that you've always wanted for yourself. I think that is really, really important because my biggest fear has been I don't want to look up and I didn't take advantage of the time because I love to work. And so like I'm going to be working. I'm going to be busy. So don't let the time go by without doing something for yourself that you really really want and that you need.
Well, Channing, I'm so excited for your new beginnings. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for sharing them with us today. Before I let you go, I ask every guest this. What is one term of your old full-time roles that you will just never accept again in this new beginning that you're building?
When I was thinking about this question, one thing I will never accept, period, and not that it happened in my last role, but in any role, is, as a woman who is a believer and a Christian, I could never accept a role where I couldn't be that in that role and in that place. And so that's really important to me. Not saying that I like walk around preaching at work, but a place that wouldn't allow kind of religious freedom for me to show up in that way. I wouldn't accept it.
Showing up as yourself in the truest sense of the word. Channing, I've learned so much through this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Leadership on New Terms. You can find us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Substack, as well as Instagram. I'm Caroline Fairchild, and I'll see you here next week.